Welcome to another episode of EMF Warriors, a podcast where we share the latest research and cutting-edge information on everything to do with electromagnetic fields. Solution-focused interviews, including genuine real-life stories of people affected by harmful EMFs and how they have fully recovered from their debilitating symptoms. So sit back, relax, and get ready to enjoy another episode of EMF Warriors.
All right, hello everybody to another podcast here at EMF Warriors. Today on the show, I have Nicolas Pineault. He is the author of the Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs that was just released. As a matter of fact, it just came out on Amazon, didn't it? Welcome.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Scott. And shout out to Jason as well. You guys are doing an amazing job with EMF Warriors. And yes, it came out on Monday officially.
Oh, wow.
And we're trying to, well, a couple of days prior, but you're never sure because of the approval. But basically, I've self-published that with my partner, Jen, who's my business partner and my wife. And we had the ebook when you guys talked about it for a while, but I just discovered that if you're not on Amazon, it's not real. Like it's just what I realized. I'm so naive about these things. I'm like, well, I got an ebook and it's like full length. It's 250 pages, and people are like, well, Nick, that's just an ebook. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna get on Amazon. So we ended up the self-publishing route, and now it launched. We had several sales going, and I'm trying to spread the word best as I can. And it's I think I tried a completely different approach. This is what I tried differently, and I mean, people can tell from the title, like the Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. Yeah. And I mean, and I gotta say, I got some backlash from at least one person from the EMF community who said like, oh, I won't even look at it because of the title, because it can sound very insulting to people that get called this tinfoil. And it's really a word that I hate, but it's the only thing that came to mind after looking at the evidence, spending a year reading everything like you did probably at one point when you learned this stuff. It was so overwhelming for me as a health journalist. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not only an issue, this is like the biggest issue of our time. I realized that, and I was shocked. So I'm like, I got to write a book, I got to do something, or else I'll kind of freak out, right? This is like my coping mechanism is spending hours and hours in front of a computer for months. It's not necessarily the easiest way to cope. Like maybe I should have just chosen another route. But anyway, now we're here with the book, and I tried to go with a lighter tone and some humor in there, and the title to say, you know what, guys, for the mainstream, for the skeptics that think, oh, this is tinfoil hat, this is UFOs and conspiracy theorists, there's no way this is credible. And I did convince people that are like in the evidence-based medicine world and that would not look at the issue for years, just like GMOs or just like vaccines. There are certain topics where it's so black and white that they wouldn't even look at it. But one guy in particular, he read the book and he's like, wait a minute, this is a real problem. This is actually the first book that I read that makes sense, and that doesn't sound like something that was too biased towards one end or another. So I think I'm doing a great job with that. But that's basically what I'm trying to do, is to kind of have this tool where you can send it to a friend, a skeptic, and he's like, what is this? Oh, non-tinfoil. Wait a minute. And then he reads through it, hopefully, and he's like, shit, you've been right all along. So that's what I'm trying here.
Yeah, cool. So just so the listeners know, what we're going to do here today on this talk is just have an informal, impromptu discussion with two people that know the ins and outs of EMFs, me and Nick, and we're just going to go with it and see where it leads. You're really hitting on some really interesting topics, Nick, about the narrative and what I call like the fictional story and the fact story around this issue. And that's what we're experiencing today pretty much with all issues. As a matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and admit it, I watched The Orville from time to time, the new series out on CBS. And there was an interesting episode that came out a couple of weeks ago. And it really hit home to me, and actually on this issue of EMFs. And how it did it was, the premise of the show was that we had basically a society of people that wasn't on Earth. They had their own Earth of their same kind, but they had a complete absolute democracy. And because they had an absolute democracy, they voted for everything on what was right and wrong. They voted if their medicines were right and wrong. They voted everything what was right and wrong. And it turned out to be a society of opinion, right? And a society of paradigms. A society kind of develops its own paradigms and how it thinks things work. But what we actually observe in the science is oftentimes radically different than just the common sense, the common wisdom of the time, when you actually can back it up with scientific observation over time, right? So we have a structure in our society where we're so on social media so much, and we learn things now off of social media. It almost becomes like that society I was describing on the Orville, where people are starting to make decisions on public sentiment rather than on what the science is saying.
Yeah, it's the same thing with politics now that I think of it. Like you choose, I do that. I mean, you choose your candidate just because he has a nice smile, right? Not because of the policies. I mean, this is how we pick politicians, through the story. Is it the comeback kid? Is it the rich guy with a lot of strong opinions, Trump? Or is it Barack Obama, the first black president in history? Is it like, there's like a storyline and people get excited, you know?
Right.
Like, when it comes to EMFs, I think it's the same thing. What I saw when I first started studying it is a lot of people that are sick physically and mentally about the issue, and that are I sensed a lot of anger. That's pretty obvious. When people are electrosensitive and they can barely live in this society, how do you expect them to have a light, humorous tone to talk about the issue? It's not funny. They're like, their life is miserable. But even with that in mind, I think certain people, like in my case, I am a little bit electrosensitive. Like my wife wakes up in the middle of the night. She's pregnant and she has insomnia issues, and her coping mechanism, unfortunately, is to look at her cell phone. But when she does that and she turns towards me and just beeps on her cell phone for a couple seconds, I instantly wake up. I'm like, and I'm like, my heart is pounding. And she realized that. She told me that like it happens every time after 5 seconds. So now she realizes that, and she shared that with a friend, and her friend is like, oh my God, this is so telling. So people need like a real world example of the fact that this is real. I think this is really like before they get told the truth, before you can, like, I think we need to develop some kind of gateway drug into EMFs, so to speak. So it's like, for me, I'm trying to hone in the message like, okay, well, maybe it's put your phone on airplane mode for 3 nights in a row, and then you feel different and you're like, wait a minute, can it be that it's actually true? And if it's affecting my sleep, what else is it affecting? It's like, it's for people that do not feel it, it's the way we need to go. It's really like a gentle approach. And sure, I mean, I hear activists, I'm not even like, I have so much respect for people that are fighting the good fight and putting so much effort. And it's true what they're saying. Sometimes there's the political agenda, there's a telecom companies, there is evil at play, honestly, in how like the status quo is keeping people sick. And it's horrible. The truth is another thing. There are so many things that I don't share. I do 3 to 4 podcasts. And in this one, I'm able to do it whatever I want. So that's why I'm glad to talk on EMF Warriors. But on most of them, when I feel the audience will not be receptive to the message, it will be a disservice to actually tell the truth. So that's kind of weird and twisted in a sense. But like if I tell them about, well, you know what, like EMFs and X-rays, they might be the same, and people are like, oh, this is too big. No, forget about it. I'll just close this up. This can't be. Right. So it is too much for them. So I guess what I'm trying and what I'm trying to propose is that you said that before we started the podcast, like hitting the EMF angle from all sides of things. You have EH Trust and the win on that SB 649 that happened. That's amazing. This is like the legislation, the political aspect, getting people in the streets. I mean, I've seen that happen. Was it last year in Poland? Like the mayor of Krakow got elected because he swore to do like EMF changes. I'm like, wait a minute, is this the same planet? Yeah. Where I talk in the streets in Montreal and Quebec, it's like people are oblivious. They don't know anything about that. They're like, people are in the streets for what? It's like it's like GMOs 10 years ago. It's like, what is a GMO? What are you talking about? Genetically modifying something. It was a vague thing, but then it became mainstream. And the way it became mainstream is not through the government educating people. Mm-hmm. It was not the companies all of a sudden becoming like saints and self-regulating themselves either. It was the people sharing, like, you know what, GMOs, I've heard about that, like they spread pesticides. And oh, really? Glyphosate? Yeah. What is Monsanto? Oh, they're evil. Oh, I hate them. And then people are on the streets, and this is what's going to change. So like this aspect, and then being able to spread the word in a way that you put yourselves in the shoes of all these people. And if sometimes I'm at Starbucks and I still go to Starbucks and get Wi-Fi. So I guess I'm not like the right, I wouldn't be the right advocate for electrosensitive people because it doesn't make sense. Right now I'm wired and I try to do my best, but still I try to be in the middle. And even though mentally I know if this is true, that X-rays are as bad as EMFs, I'm really doing something stupid right now. It's like, even though in my mind, like I don't know, my intelligence knows that, I still do it because I cannot compute the fact that I need to go in there and say people like, leave this room. This is maybe what like if myself from the future 50 years from now comes back, maybe that's what it would say. It would say, Nick, you don't understand. You're losing 1 day of life every day you spend at Starbucks for 4 hours, and you don't want to do that. Like, trust me, maybe I would listen then, but it's hard to quantify. It's hard to say. So people need something tangible to rely on to kind of take action. And I'm still figuring out. The book is fairly new. I'm trying to figure out a way to communicate that. I don't know, like I've been thinking about a lot of things. Like, what do you think about something like when you keep your phone in your pocket, it can hurt your swimmers, and then tag your friend who you want to like still be a man, or something like super basic and even like, I don't know, funny or ridiculous. And just that is like, oh, wait a minute, this is, yeah. What are you talking about? People are like, this object, there's no way it affects me. And then they realize is this true? And it's just like this kind of message. I think it will become way bigger now that Dr. Mercola is looking at it. I've been collaborating a little bit on his book. I think you guys have been a little bit trying to steer him in the right direction. He's really on. And then the message is going to become like, I think 2018 is going to be amazing. For you guys, for everyone, with the NTP study and everything. So I'm excited, but I'm going to stop talking. Let me know your thoughts.
There's so much that you mentioned in that last segment that I'll just hit with certain things. So I think we're living in a time where we have like a perfect synergy of like poisons and toxins that we're exposed to. like we've got EMFs obviously, but we've got, molds, we've got, certain injections we get either from pharmaceuticals, even from supplements. I don't actually do good on supplements, believe it or not, because I have my electrosensitivities are kind of like with glutamate receptors and the NMDAs in the back of the retina. So I get these like spots that appear in my vision. Wow. So that can be activated by EMFs, but it could also be activated by a really bad diet with high glutamate foods. So it's interesting. Like I see the synergy on this front. Like if I were injected with a vaccine into my muscle tissue, I would expect, that the immediate of the glutamate in the vaccine is already a problem to me, aside from everything else that people know that's in them. So it's interesting where on that front, where now in 2017 we have like bad food supply, our food supply doesn't have a lot of nutrient density. We've got all these things we're shooting us up with or taking drugs for, trying to compensate for it. We have bad gut biome, or our gut biome isn't like functioning as it should.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of our second brain. And for our neurology, actually, having a good gut, is helpful for your brain. I mean, it produces a lot of melatonin. And if you can't sleep well at night, your pineal is obviously the go-to source for your melatonin, for your sleep regulation. But now, I could be sleeping with close to a magnetic field, or having your phone next to your bedstand, and it's pulsing out radio frequency microwaves all night long, kind of lowering the amount or even stifling the melatonin production. Until melatonin is a beautiful, free radical scavenger as an antioxidant that goes into every cell in your body. It's needed. So just kind of like over time, we can be hit with different sources, and it is important that people start thinking about the synergies and how they might attribute their disease to EMF, but it might not actually be really EMF is too much of a problem in their life. So it might be something else hitting them, like our normal things that we know about. But at the same time, EMFs have this really crazy synergy where it can open up the VGCCs, the voltage gated calcium channels, allow more calcium into cells, which causes more oxidative stress and the production of free radicals. And then it can help open up the blood-brain barrier, so things get through into the brain that wasn't supposed to be there. So that's what I'm saying. Like with this synergy going on, it's a really it's hard to know really what's happening in each individual. The individual, if the individual is a little more aware of just all the potentials, and not dismissing EMF as a potential, then they might start making the link that, well, at night I do get bad sleep for whatever reason when my cell phone's next to my bedstand. Let me give it like a little trial, like put it away like you're saying, and go back and forth to see if it actually makes a difference. And then it becomes anecdotal to the person's world. Like, was it really that thing, or am I creating a placebo effect? Well, whatever it's happening, we experience it. Some of us experience it directly. About right now, it's been said it's around 5% of the population that have electrosensitivities, or EHS, which is electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which is a poor term again on the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really a sickness. It's actually a disease, a kind of a longer term disease expression that is potentially activated in the body through the mitochondrial processes, through other things. So it's like this perfect storm is at the same time when we have really poor narrative and exposure. And actually, we have poor role models. Like, I can't even really think of too many role models that will actually call this issue out. It's been around since the 1950s and 60s with the microwave radiation then on military personnel. They know about it. So it's kind of been covered up a little bit through the 70s and 80s. And now today, people don't, they think it might be a little bit of a problem, but they don't realize how much of a problem it could be for an individual life. So I'm like thinking, why isn't like the US government or the Canadian government or other governments here that, have all this knowledge? You can go look up government documents online about this issue, but we have people now in government that are suffering. I mean, we had, this last month, the glioblastoma on John McCain. People don't talk about the cause, but we know these are like longer term disease expressions. But also, I look directly at Trump. Like, Barron Trump, his son, shows symptoms of possible potential EMF exposure damage to me from my point of view. It might not be that at all. But like, our leaders in government need to say that they need to admit, A, they have the problem, and then B, once they admit the problem, it's going to cause a ripple effect back the other direction towards industry that industry doesn't want to deal with, right? I mean, I don't blame them. Because,
oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just this total like political silent monster that's just out there, and it's up to us to protect ourselves at this moment. If we don't, then we could just go out blindly, like not having any EMF hygiene and creating more damage, and we could get through the risk. Maybe the risk potential is minimal in one person's life, it's not going to be a problem. But in the other person's life, their place is flooded in EMFs, and they have no idea it's flooded. They have a perfect synergy of convergences of, radio towers plus cell phone towers plus the radar system plus the television station, everything beaming in right at their house. They had no idea that they're being saturated with EMFs. And that's at the heart of it. Like, I think in the future, we're going to find places where there'll be maps. And I posted this on EMF Warriors actually earlier today, that there's going to be like a heat map. You'll be able to see kind of like the town location where you live. And over here, it's really hot with, a lot of EMF microwave stuff going on here. And over in this spot, over by the hills, off the power grid, it's going to be still a nice little pocket of very few EMFs over there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
what your thoughts on that, yeah.
Well, I think we have to market some people have started doing like coffee shops without Wi-Fi just because it's like, screw Wi-Fi, let's talk instead, or something like that. You see messages around like human connection. That's one thing. But then I'm thinking, why not, like, once people start picking up the issue, there's going to be coffee shops that will be like, well, we have like, instead of Wi-Fi, it could be like wired, RD, like wired, something like that, and kind of market this as the new cool. And I guess, EMFs, once it has to reach the critical point, it's just, I don't know if that's going to happen, because this is just invisible. This is so untangible. But still, people, like, let's say pesticides, right? Mm-hmm. People actively try to reduce pesticides in their food by eating organic. Has anyone looked at a lab of their bell pepper to make sure that it was actually it did contain pesticides in the first place? No one does that. So it's all based on a fear that's invisible and unverifiable too. So it's the same thing with EMFs, now that I think of it. So I think it has to come from the public, and people are going to start saying, well, Wi-Fi is actually not cool. It has to be that. It has to be either it's a spot of the city that's Wi-Fi, then let's go by the countryside where it's calmer and people gather and they feel better. And then and then people in the hotspot that sell stuff, they're going to be like, wait a minute, people are not coming now. And this is like the complete opposite of what is happening right now. Like in India, they have programs where shops can have free Wi-Fi that's sponsored by XYZ company, and then they see their revenue increase by so much. Like if I were a business owner in India right now in certain regions, I would do that. It's like my livelihood. Like it would increase my sales because people are like, oh, wait a minute, a hotspot, and then they go there. So it's really hard not to get on board with the hype and with everything else. I have a friend. I don't want to reveal too many details, but he has a business, and let's say he's developing transportation, and basically he's like, well, our next plan is to develop 4G and Wi-Fi hotspots in those vehicles. What should we do to protect them? Because he's well aware of what we chatted for hours about the issue and whatnot, but he has a company, and now the clients are demanding this as a technology. So what do you do? Honestly, I don't want to be in his shoes. Very hard. Mm-hmm. If the health of his business depends on it, I told him, well, you got to think about reducing exposure as much as possible for people in the vehicle while maintaining the minimum level of connectivity that's satisfying to a user, and then make sure that the user that is near the antenna isn't blasting more than the user that is not. So hiring a building biologist and whatnot. So it's not the perfect answer. The perfect answer would be get rid of that stuff. But we're in this transition phase where we can make things way better. For example, I was chatting or just by email with Dr. Schrader from the Eco Wi-Fi, who developed a Wi-Fi that produces 90% less EMFs, mm-hmm. Just by basically using a piece of software where I think it uses 1 millisecond instead of 10 times faster or something in the pulsing rate. It's something silly. And basically what he says, I don't know, I think it's proven, but it can maintain the same speed and same connectivity while reducing signals by 90%. Well, this stuff needs to be sold everywhere. It needs to be, people would be interested in that as a kind of transition phase. Instead of telling them go wired, I mean, I tell that, and I think if you have a home, if you do not rent your apartment, you own it, you own a condo, it's worth it. It's going to be a few $100, and then you get like lightning fast speed, and you don't drop connection. Like here in my office, the router is the other side of the apartment, and I get no connectivity. So it was just frustrating. So I have a 75-foot wire that I just plug in, and then when it's done, to not annoy my wife too much, I just roll it up, and then I put it in the closet. So that's another possibility. But now that we're going to have a child, I think we're going to go towards wired more and more and more. But people need to have tools to get on board slowly but surely, even when they don't feel it. And that's the hard part.
That is absolutely the hard part.
Yeah, it is.
I was just going to mention, like, because you're becoming parents, and I've been a parent for like 9 years now, that is really a good avenue for this issue. Like when parents are aware that school buses are being installed with Wi-Fi right now.
Yeah. When
they're aware that all of the most of the schools are now pushing tablets into first graders' hands, and these kids are using these devices like several hours a day even, and you know, like, as you know, with how the physics works, if that Wi-Fi router's way at the back of the building, they're getting very, very little signal, then it causes more power density to come to that tablet, and they're even getting more potential exposure unless they have a nice like network. But even like what you're saying, it's like, how are we even going to convince people this is a problem if they're not going to believe it's a problem in the first place? They're never going to want to buy that tech you mentioned to lower the emission of the Wi-Fi. I mean, like even Andrew Marino was saying this on our podcast earlier, that it's not just about the intensity of the Wi-Fi. It's the fact that if our body can pick up these signals at all, it's telling something different, right, in us. That's what I got out of that. And I think about like all light. Like if you think about EMFs from this context, this is how I try to convince people usually, like on the street. If I get into a conversation with them, I let them know, I'm like, okay, when you are out into the sun and you get a tan and you know you're getting some nice vitamin D production on your skin, that is light, UVB and some IR hitting your cholesterol under your skin, producing some vitamin D for your benefit. IR light also isn't, you know, it's way on the other side of the visible light spectrum. It's not like up towards X-rays or anything like that. It's way down below below red and infrared, and that infrared light's used for a lot of mechanisms in life. And so it's not a stretch, even from that point of view, to think, well, if our human biology is using UVA, UVB, the visible light spectrum, and IR, why do you think that this other light down here on the spectrum wouldn't have an influence on life? Like,
it's true. Yeah. Good point.
So yeah, it's really like, it kind of goes back to what you said about, if you do not have any electrosensitivities now, you might later. so we're actually like, and that was me, like through my, you know, I think some of my electrosensitivities and looking back on my life and what I did, I slept on a waterbed for over, I think 12 years, and I got it at the age of 11. And some of my metabolic issues started showing up at the age of 12. So I kind of see the link, because, you know, sleeping on a waterbed is like having an electric blanket all night long as you're sleeping.
Right.
And I can imagine the magnetic and electrical fields pushed out from that might have pushed me more down the road towards electrosensitivity. Now, I'm 47 now, but maybe if I wouldn't have had the waterbed, or if I wouldn't have had other exposures I worked in biology labs, and I was around a lot of EMFs as well, just doing scientific work. And then later on in the video game industry, you know, like everybody now, like we'll have monitors in front of them and all kinds of equipment. So you're going to get exposures from that, unless now I know to use EMF hygiene to push it back another foot or two for the inverse square root law, to just be out in the fields, or like know my spaces and know how things are hooked up. But if I wouldn't have let's say, done that, maybe it would be, instead of at the age of 47 with my current electrosensitivities, it might have hit in 10 or 20 years down the road. So I view this as kind of like an overall stressor, long-term stressor thing, just like the cigarette smoker. In the first 10 years of life, or 10 years of smoking, everything's great. They feel great. They're magically losing weight somehow. And like they're doing it for, they have all these reasons set up in their mind why they're smoking. Just like everybody has these reasons why they're using their iPads or their cell phones, and for good reason, because we want to communicate. But when people start just dismissing or having their own paradigms that this light frequency and the screen light frequency, the high blue light, spectrum that comes off those devices, all of that, if they think doesn't have an influence, I think people like to just compartmentalize and go, well, sure, okay, fine, it has an influence, but I'm not going to let it bother me. And then they forget about it. And maybe they, they'll, I don't know. That's what we're trying to tell people here, is that we want to get them knowing that there is a potential poison problem. You can make up your mind about how you want to, what risks you want to take in your life. If you want to take risks by absorbing all this technology, at least dig into know what the science is saying behind it. And maybe if you have some problem, you go to the gym and you get the headache, and you realize, wow, it's every time I'm on a treadmill, I get this headache. But when I'm over here on this regular mechanical bike, I never get a headache. Then you might have actually sensitivities to this, because that treadmill generates a lot of EMF.
Yeah. And that's, oh my God. And that's another thing, I have a hard time. I talk about cell phones a lot in the book Marketing and whatnot, because it's the most obvious source. When I start talking about electric fields, and some people are like, you totally lost me, Nick. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I guess, it's the most common issues. I think people, unfortunately, I want them to care about stuff like brain cancer, but it's so far down the road that it barely makes people take action. Yeah. So more immediate things like headaches, for example, hey, do you feel you have headaches? And then, I don't know, let's look at statistics. Maybe it's 1 out of 5 adults or something crazy that have regular headaches, I'm sure, or migraines. And you're like, well, it could be your cell phones. And here's study number 1, study number 2, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. And then here's what you should do. And if you want to learn more, then EMF Warriors or NonTin Fall Guide to EMFs or EA Stress. But this is kind of the immediate effect, or did you know 4 hours of laptop use equals 25% of your swimmers are dead, nullified? You're like, wait a minute, 4 hours? I spent 40 hours this week working on my laptop. So what is it doing? And is that a reason I cannot have children? Or even men will argue, well, that's perfect. I already have children. I don't want any more. But you're like, well, what is it doing to your testosterone, dude?
Right.
And now they're in shock. They're like, what? Testosterone? I want that. So, and you cannot, you can make some claims, but it's not there's not a lot of studies about that. But it needs to be more invasive, more immediate, something that can affect their life in super short manner and very, that they can prove conclusively, I think. So this is the hard part. Even all the talk, well, imagine what it can do to your cellular oxidative stress for 35 years. And people are like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't care about my health in 35 years. That's not what I want to say, but deep down, not a lot of people care about those things. And I had a discussion with one of my friend, the same with the transport business, and it was really making me think. He said, Nick, you know what? I believe in your project. I know, I understand what you're saying, and I reduce EMFs, and yes, you've sold me. But people don't care. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. No, they do care. No, you don't understand. They don't care about this long-term message. You've lost them already. You gotta be basic and almost primal in the way you communicate the issue. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that. On an intellectual standpoint, we try to come up with all these terms, and no, you don't understand how the physics works, and people aren't even willing to recognize like a simple effect. So it needs to be super, super basic. I need certain, like you guys appeal to a certain segment of the community and spread the message in a certain way. Trust, same thing. But then I think more people, and I'm trying to get, the way I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to get every single holistic health practitioner to get on board.
Yeah.
Because
great.
what I've realized right now is that people won't get on board, but if their doctor tells them to do it, so Dr. Klinghardt, for example, does not see a patient unless they have done EMF mitigation and learn about it. I sent my book to Dr. Klinghardt. Hopefully it will get it in a couple of weeks, and I know I'm connected. I'll be on their podcast too. So I'm trying, like this guy has a voice, and doctors from I've spoken in front of 250 doctors from the Mindshare Summit community. These guys are holistic health experts, most of them 15, 20 years seeing patients, like 120 patients a week. And most of them, I shared like what is happening with 5G in 5 minutes. Basically, just a small, like talking about small cells, new frequencies, and the dangers and electrosensitivity. And people, I mean, 50, like 1/7 of the conference came to see me personally, like, Nick, what can we do about the issue? Like they were stunned. Basically. It was new information for them. And it made me realize that before, like, or at the same time, we need to educate the public, we need to do the politics, and then the healers and the acupuncturists, nutritionists, personal trainers, everyone that is involved in making other people healthier needs to have the EMF Warrior information, Nick Pineault's information, Trust information, and all this, and then send people this way so that they can adopt this hygiene. And then the word will spread, because these are health conscious individuals that usually will tell their friends, like, come on, go do some exercise. And they try to motivate their friends and their family to do the same and to be the change. You know, so I think it's another aspect, getting practitioners on board. And I was so, I look at the portrait like, okay, let's say I'm a doctor, I'm a holistic doctor in the States. Can I actually get EMF education that gives me like credits or a certification? And there's building biology, but it will cost a lot, and it takes a year and a half. I looked into it, and it was just too tedious and too expensive for me at the moment. Maybe later. There's GeoVital. They have barely any practitioner. It's hard. Like there's actually no certification. Nothing that could be a 1 day or 2 day. Like if someone wants to get in touch and get that going, I don't know if we're going to have time to do that next year. But if we do develop that, I know this is a market. This is not only a business opportunity, but to get all these practitioners on board. So that they know the basics. Most of them don't even know the basics. They don't even know, like, I'm talking about people that are experts in like Lyme disease and sleep and hormones and like the most sophisticated holistic health treatments on the planet you can imagine. And then they don't even know what's the difference between Bluetooth and a cell phone. Or they don't, like the most basic things, they won't know, like, oh, does airplane mode really close your cell phone? Or is it, most of them have never held a meter in their hand. So there's a lot of work to do to educate these practitioners. And trust me, they are hungry to learn. It's not because they're not willing. And most of them, this is like, I think the number one hot topic you've seen. I don't know if you saw Dr. Mercola's talk at the Bulletproof conference. One of the hottest topics right now in health in the higher circles, the holistic doctors, biohackers, people that are really into self-experimentation and that buy like $25,000 devices for like, I don't know, cold thermogenesis or crazy stuff. They are starting to be very passionate about EMFs now. They're like, okay, this is the next like thing that's affecting my performance and I need to learn about it. So Mercola got on stage at the Bulletproof conference. I just saw the video a little bit and invited Peter Sullivan and Brian Hoyer from GeoVital. And he told the entire room, like, this is a huge issue and you guys are not getting it. And just like Jack Cruz can be super vocal about the issue in his own way, and I appreciate his message. And he's like, Jack Cruz would be like, you guys are, I don't know how he would put it. I don't want to deform his word, but it would be very blunt about it. And I love this side of it. It would be like, you guys don't get it. Like you invest in all these melatonin supplements, but then you keep your cell phone as a tracker at night open on 4G next to your head. You don't get it. You don't understand. You're wasting your time essentially, and you don't understand how much of an impact it's making. You're talking about intermittent fasting and how you need to activate your NRF2 pathway, and then you destroy it through microwave radiation, right? So to some extent, we cannot quantify that, but still, if you have quantifiable data, you can look it up. So these people, I think, are the segue. Like right now, they're convinced, most of them. Then it's going to go down a little bit to like people that they serve. So patients, coaching clients and whatnot. And these are like usually people that have more money to invest in these kind of services, that have a huge health interest. Usually they come from California, they come from New York, and like the richest states, probably Texas, like Austin or something. So after that, it's going to go mainstream. So I think we have to hit every single one of these aspects, like in order to really push it fast. And some of these areas are lacking that I'm seeing. And like just thinking about it, I'm getting a headache. I'm like, I have so much work to do. But I'm sure you're the same. We feel powerless sometimes. But you know what? We're all doing our best. And people listening to this, a lot of activists, and like I want to salute everyone's like dedication to the issue, because it's a lot of work. And whether it's nonprofit like you guys are doing, I'm doing for profit, but it's the way I make a living. I sell a book. Like I would want, actually, like if I were, I don't know, like a philanthropist billionaire, I would sell everything for free for sure, because, or maybe it would be like $3 or something ridiculous, just to give a little bit incentive and make sure people are a little serious or something like that. But I would price it to just spread the information. And if someone electrosensitive came to me, it would be like, well, it's free for you. Like, I just want to help you. But yeah, it's another, I cannot price everything for free, but still, it is critical, the work that everyone is doing here. And we just need to continue doing it. And I'm not like, are you pessimist about the issue? Like, do you think it's going to be resolved?
Yeah, it's going to be
resolved.
It's going to be resolved.
Okay.
I think it's going to be resolved maybe in a way we don't think about it. Like the whole process you just explained there, where it could kind of like go down the chain and it really get into the doctors and the coaches and the athletes and everyone, and just kind of like spread down the chain, and people kind of get an awareness that this EMF stuff could be a problem. Like that could be a method that if we just keep pushing it, it probably will happen at some point. However, I'm even more of an optimist. I think that some event could actually happen where suddenly people feel like either the electrosensitivities, like 5G could be that event, believe it or not. Let's say you happen to live on the second floor and there's 5G path with some other 4G frequencies through it. We're talking like frequencies in the 5G, the new 5G, like 25 gigahertz, right? Like there could be a line of 25 gigahertz coming into your section, and you're constantly living there and you just feel the effects of it. The person on the third floor and on the first floor might not feel it because they're going to be more probably beam forming those frequencies. But on top of that, we have the older frequencies that the 5G backbone looks like they're going to be using, between like 600 and 900 megahertz again. And some of these frequencies might even go up in intensity for all we know. So it's kind of like an added soup of EMF that's now going to be coming into play. And people might hit a threshold. They might be like, yay, I'm going to move to this smart city. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be able to be on my smartphone all day long. And it might seem like a perfect envisioned thing, but then they start living the life. And within a few days or a few weeks, they're like, why do I feel so bad? Why am I getting lightheaded more? Why am I getting migraines? Why, they might actually start connecting the dots if they have some backbone in knowing what's going on. I see also this other side of citizen scientists. Like there's this whole area that is developed at the biohackers community. Like you mentioned with Mercola, and he went down to the conference and he did that. We loved it so much. We put him as a feature in our newsletter, this last newsletter that came out yesterday for Mercola, to really show that biohackers video is really where a lot of people are going to. It's like, like, I think back, I always like to like pit this against my past. 20 years ago, no one was doing any of this. We didn't have to worry about like, how is my mitochondria and getting my coenzyme and am I supplementing the magnesium all right? And am I taking my magnesium baths? And am I doing all this stuff? And why do I feel bad in the evening? Why is my sleep bad? Like, no one was doing this 20 years ago. And I'm old enough to see that life was being lived very smooth. We'd get out into nature a lot. We'd come back indoors. Yes, we were still surrounded by the power grid and the EMFs off the power grid, but we didn't have this kind of microwave radiation around us just as we have. But like the level of adrenal stress and cortisol stress and kids walking, going crazy and wild all around us compared to like, think about like, back in the 1920s, like if you watch an old show with kids in it, they're very disciplined, very behaved. They could, they have very much a lot of control over their mind and their emotions and themselves in comparison to the kids we have today. And of course, psychiatrists would attribute that to the way our society is and what parents now allow or disallow for, behavior, discipline, and all this. But it really goes into the biophysics. The biophysics is what all the doctors really are lacking. They weren't really taught it in their education background. Like when I was at Oregon State, I took a biophysics course, as a matter of fact, and I was taught Krebs cycle and a bunch of biochemistry in that course. I wasn't actually taught about light physics, about interactions with light physics. Now some of these biohacker stuff that's coming out now is a lot of LLT technology with the low light therapy stuff for treating the body in certain ways with light, right? So we've been doing this forever. It's called the sun, but like, people wanting to still have a livelihood are going to be looking at what in the biophysics is really helping us and really like merging that back and saying, we have systems inside of us that are using, the direct current and letting our bodies live. Like, if we didn't have this energy in us, if I was, I'll be morbid here for a second. If I was here dead on the ground, I wouldn't have energy running through my body, but I would have the same biochemistry. The biochemistry of a living Scott or a dead Scott is the same. What makes that a living Scott living is the energy in us. And that point is missed on doctors, everyone, like across society right now. And that's part of what we're trying to get out, is that nature has provided us this way we have lived and the energy we need. And now with all this other man-made energy, we're living in the age of electricity, and that's what this is going to be called even 200 years from now. We have done things to our own biophysics to alter it in certain ways where it's expressing more disease potential in certain ways. And that's where all the science is going to come together at some point here. Just all the angles at which energy can influence us. We've been talking a lot about, I want to see research on the mitochondria, because the mitochondria is your energy generator. So, and mitochondria is the most dense in neurons and in your heart and your brain tissue. So it only makes sense why we're seeing more neurological diseases going up the chart. And, we have cured and really helped a lot of the side on the biochemistry front, but now it's time doctors wake up, in my opinion, and start looking at the biophysics with the biochemistry in tandem to really like complete the puzzle, because the puzzle has been like over here in this one little section. We've been working on this little part of the puzzle over here for the last 70, 80 years since Pasteur. And now that we're to the point of knowing all of these new interactions with the biophysics, we can start filling out the rest of the puzzle and getting a real better understanding of how life functions.
Yeah, it's really what's missing. Like, and I see even the cancer community moving towards like the mitochondrial paradigm shift, where they understand, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense the way we thought about cancer growth and it's mitochondrial disease, and people, a lot of researchers that are extremely credible, publish extremely well researched papers that are extremely well acclaimed, and they show mechanisms that are just mind-blowing to most people. And the link, like once we have enough, well, there's well enough, but like I see that even like right now in like I'm trying to market the book, right? And I argue stuff like, well, researchers from Harvard, from Columbia, from all these universities are actually saying this is a problem. And people, when they hear that, they're like, they cannot ignore me anymore. They're like, oh, no, that can't be. And I show them the link. I'm like, well, here's this guy like Anthony Miller, that used to be part of the WHO class 2B classification back in 2011. He's like super vocal, and he's like, well, this is class 1, guys, like based on what is a class 1 carcinogen, how many studies do we want when it comes to human trials and whatever population studies. And there's a bunch of criteria that I don't remember top of mind, but he's like, well, class 1, the only thing missing is the meeting, which will not happen, I think. But I think it's all coming together, and I think that certain aspects can be communicated. Like you mentioned, just circling back to the beginning of our discussion, you mentioned like getting people to understand EMFs, and in a couple of seconds, it's really what is the biggest issue, or the biggest like challenge for me, and I think for all the EMF warriors, is like, okay, let's chat about ways that we can get people to be convinced. One of the ways that I like to do, like I meet people in coffee shops, they say, the first thing they say is, oh, you have I have this laptop stand, the Roost, ROOST stand, and I have all this set up. So he's like, oh, what is that? Well, that's a Roost stand. And I pitch them about the thing. I don't even get a commission on that. I should. But anyhow, I tell them, and then they see my red screen with Iris software. Yeah. They're like, what is that? I'm like, well, blue light, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what do you do? I'm an author. What do you write? Well, about EMFs. Oh, wait a minute. I thought, so I always get into the conversation, and I'm like, oh, I got to cut this short, or else I'll be spending 2 hours here. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you know what? Cell phone safety standards date back from 1996. And they look at me in shock, and they're like, I'm in. I believe you. Like, this is an issue. So certain sentences like that are so quick, so snappy, that people are like, wait, doesn't make sense. If it's a parent, you're like, well, you know, your child is using a cell phone, but do you know that they are tested on a mannequin head that's equivalent to a 6'2" man? So it penetrates deeper into the brain. It's actually not intended for child use. And did you know that Belgium has banned them for sale under 12 years old? And they look at me, they're like, what the hell is that? And they believe me instantly. So it's not that much about, like, some people want to hear about the science, but other people want these facts that are provable. And then there's another segment. Maybe one thing I want to get into is like, okay, how do we get these annoying skeptics? Like, how do we get them to not only shut up? It's not like in a confrontational way, but how do we get them to listen to the possibility that
I think those skeptics will eventually be on our side. I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because they are very detail-oriented people, and if they actually find the right information, those skeptics will come over onto our side at some point.
That's what I'm thinking. So people that are engineers, like I always send Martin Powell's like paper or presentation, so that I'm like, well, guys, they always repeat the same thing. There's no mechanism. There's no proven mechanism. Doesn't exist. There's no way that microwave radiation can ionize your cells. And all this meme keeps repeating it, right? And when you repeat it enough, it becomes true. And I'm like, well, Martin Powell's work. And they're like, Martin who? I'm like, well, that's the problem. Like, if you don't take 30 seconds to at least look at it, and you're like, wait a minute, VGCCs and whatnot, there's actually biophysics here that are at play, and it's very real, and I would say very proven. Like, this guy is not anyone, and he's well recognized in the scientific community as like a well-respected dude. And then if it's not him, it's going to be someone else that's going to take over, hopefully, to continue this work that's so important to kind of make the mechanism so strong that it cannot be ignored. And even without the mechanism, I mean, like you mentioned, the military has been like, since what? Like I found documents lately, I think it was Magda Havis archive of like Professor Zori Glazer, I think there are stuff from the 50s, the military, that are looking at like, well, microwave radiation at very low dosage can do this and that and this, and it's been unclassified. And I'm looking at the documents that are like typewriter, like secret agent stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is actually like, this is published science. Like scientists have been paid a lot to produce that, and it is credible. Like the military only asks for like the highest level of research and of tools and of like weaponry and infantry. I mean, it's all about optimization. When they pay for something, it has to work. And like Jack Cruz shared, like most of them are becoming obese now. So I guess they're going to be part of like looking to find what the hell is wrong. And maybe it's because they're on their cell phone a lot. Maybe it's the blue light. Maybe it's all of them. It's probably all of them, or radar. I don't know what. But yeah, it's just crazy that certain things make people like, I think we have to find like super short, non-threatening way, non-confrontational ways to get them on board and say like, hey, maybe like, look at this video, here's the mechanism. And some of them will get on board. And if they work in IT, it's a shock. It's hard for them to even conceive that this is possible because they feel responsible.
Yeah, you just picked up Thors Hammer and hit this issue all the way to Asgard, in my opinion. Because really at the heart of this issue, like asbestos, smoking, lead paints, mercury, no one wants to hear negativity. No one wants to hear it. Like the presentation is going to have to be, like you said, you almost have to like, and that's what I try to do at EMF Warriors a lot. I try to like kind of ride this line of understanding that there's been a lot of researchers, and this is a very serious issue that can lead to cancer and other diseases, right? But at the same time, for the public to become aware of the issue in mass, you have to hit this from every single side that works. And what we know from the entertainment industry is that comedians work. Funny ads on TV work. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have that. We'd have boring, depressing research looking like commercials on TV. And everybody would be just flipping the channel because there's like, oh, I have another whatever again on TV. A lot of the pharmaceutical ads are that way, right? People, when it comes on, you hear this list of secret, like a very low-toned person whispering all these bad negative side effects. Everyone just wants to tune it out. I don't want to hear about the bad stuff. But what we're trying to do is we're saying we want to make your lives better. We want to make it so you don't have disease. So just kind of like investigate this and practice some EMF hygiene. You know, start like if you want to get deeper into it and you have a better backbone, right? It's having like a good backbone of like nobody wants to be brought down. Everyone wants to be uplifted. And if you come across an issue or a Facebook group or social media and people are, you know, really doing bad things and saying bad stuff, you're probably going to be out of that group. We do exactly the opposite at EMF Warriors. We try to really hit that Thor's hammer, like I'm saying, and saying like, you're going to be uplifted. You're going to like learn. It's going to be like a little bit of an education. We're going to make it fun for you. And if we can find humor in it, great. But we also know alongside us and people in our community have EHS and ES like myself. So it is it's a tightrope to walk, but we're having to walk it because no one else out there is willing to do it. Or they don't have the background to do it, to bring it in messaging it in a very, you know, fun or uplifting or, you know, almost a scientific way, because at some point, 50 years from now, this is going to be taught all through schools, like probably in high school and all the way up, because, you know, it has such an impact on everybody on a daily basis, and in ways where it can almost feel very conspiracy theory. I mean, when you get into like I watched a video a couple days ago on this lady was doing an experiment seeing the ice melting in Greenland and why there's been a bunch of ice and water flows underneath the ice sheets. And she was talking about how if you put a dry ice cube in a microwave and turn it on, you do not melt the ice. It won't melt. Oh. But if you make the surface of the ice cube more watery, you turn it on. Of course, that's how a microwave works, is that it overpulses the water molecules in the microwave oven to heat it up. So the takeaway there is I was thinking she was showing how she used radar across Greenland to show how you could see the base of like all the mountains and all the land and the geography, because the radar went straight through the ice and you could see the ground everywhere. And I was like thinking, this is the biggest irony ever. They're pulsing Greenland with radar. What if it's starting to melt now, and now they're pulsing with radar? Are they actually making the problem worse? So it's like that's where this issue of microwave radiation and all of the entire lower part of the EMF spectrum, that people don't think, they think it's benign because it doesn't knock, electrons out of their orbitals. Like they think it's not a problem for anything, or the environment, it's not a problem for bees or birds, and it's not a problem for humans and our electric fields and EMFs that we generate as humans. Like there's so many interactions. This is so fundamental to life that when people wake up and they get enough of a basic understanding, we have even politicians out there that are behind us. We have actors, we have people in the entertainment industry. Like it's going to happen at some point. Now, hopefully that will happen next year or the year after. And there's a lot of people now all across this issue that will probably do something to try to make that happen. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's gonna be. There's going to be disruption. That's all I can tell you. I mean, people are talking about disruption. I don't know if you know Peter Diamandis, and he's like a guy well connected to a lot of billionaires, and he's all about like, industries are getting like, I don't know, Kodak back in the 90s didn't see the digital camera coming, so they completely got destroyed. And now they're barely a company that makes like, I don't know, camera parts or something. It's like a tenth of what it used to be. So disruption brings new business opportunities, and some businesses will fall. And another aspect will be like, what if we can get billionaires and people that are investors and like to kind of foresee that, oh, wait a minute, you're talking about a multi-trillion industry that's going to need to replace every single device with safer Wi-Fi or whatever, biocompatible Wi-Fi, if that's even possible, or something like that. Someone who has vision could see, oh my God, we're going to get ahead of Apple. I'm thinking, I'm trying to, I don't know, I've sent my book to Naveen Jain. Like he will be his company will be the fourth force on the human earth to go on the moon. Like after China, the US, and the Russians, it will be a corporation, and that's his. So I'm like, well, this guy thinks big. Like, why not? Like, I don't know, him, or even, I don't know, Richard Branson would probably not like it because it's the last time with Virgin. But I mean, someone will pick it up at some point, and then, well, this guy's going to be rich. Good for him if he helps humanity in a big way. But I think it will. The good thing is that now these issues will resolve themselves faster than it happened in humanity's history, but with more problems caused by that, like more layovers, more families that don't have a job anymore because I don't know, Apple cuts down 100,000 employees because they lose so much about their stock value or whatever. So in the meantime, like we got to think about these people and be human about it. So that's it. This is why I don't like getting into fights with skeptics. If they're skeptic, it's not because they're dumb. It's that they really believe deep down that this is bullshit. And if they if they see the evidence, at one point they're going to be like, oh my God, it was actually credible. But some are hardcore skeptics. It is going to take mainstream media to tell them that this is happening. Some of them are a little bit more open and will be like, oh my God, Martin Powell's research is actually credible. And this is actually true. So let's get ahead of the curve and let's, I don't know, start investing in safe technologies. It has to be a new thing where I talked about organic food. Organic technologies, like something like that. Like this is a safe cell phone. Oh, yours is not safe. Well, that's all right. You can use it. You can eat at McDonald's still. It's still legal, right? But people are starting to pick up the idea that if you eat there over and over and over, you shouldn't blame your genes about your bad health. Right. It's kind of, people put two and two together. So if we can create the same thing where, well, man, you've been using your cell phone and that's you haven't bought the new safe phone yet, and you know you use it too much and you feel bad. Well, kind of put two and two together. You're like, this is unhealthy. It has to be considered unhealthy, and at this point, it's going to explode because now the demand for healthier stuff, it's going to be like the new gluten-free. Like, oh, this phone is EMF free or like 95% less or something like that. And then people, once they're going to be demand, I mean, it's going to be crazy, and it can go very, very, very fast if we keep spreading the word. And yeah, you're right that I can't even imagine. It could be just a couple of years and we completely replace, but there's going to be so much disruption, and it's going to be. Do you think it's going to be a scandal?
It already is a scandal. Like, to everybody that's known about this issue for a long time, we know it's a scandal, but it's just a matter of messaging, like you said, believability, paradigms, the lack of education of teaching about biophysics in schools, the more modern studies in the last like 15 years that's really solidified this. It really goes deep, even back down to the power grid. Actually, most power grid, a lot of power companies actually do a lot to mitigate, like magnetic fields, electric fields. Like I found that some of the power companies are more apt to be admitting more to that some of their power lines and stuff could cause biological effects, but they kind of have their own established standards that are even better at times than what the government standards are.
Gotcha.
So we need kind of like more people like that, I think, in industry that are there in industry that can, the people that will have EHS or ES showing up in the next 10 years, there's going to be more people that I think will gravitate to, trying to do the right moral thing. I think this is really a moral issue, because once you learn about what's going on and really evaluate the entire plethora of the science, and you look at all the studies on all sides and you do it through a lens that's not a biased lens, you really see that the science is very credible on this issue. But almost everyone out there, right? They're not citizen scientists. They're not going to take the time to learn the breadth of all of the past studies, the 20,000 plus studies that have been done. And many of the studies show no effect or little effect. A lot of studies show a lot of effects across the board, across a lot of different type forms of life, not just humanity. So it's kind of what it is. It's a scandal, and it's whatever forces in play that are currently on top of the biggest bully on the block. Those guys are always going to try to downplay all the risks because they're going to just keep raking in the money, as they themselves have developed a paradigm where they don't think it's an issue. Because how many CEOs are scientists? How many CEOs go to the literature and try to read and see what's going on, what's been going on for over 40, 50 years in the scientific literature? So that's really like a lot of us, this next generation coming up, they're going to be pretty pissed off. Like, if you're a 4-year-old now and you're putting stuff in your hands and you get irradiated and you have your life affected now in some way, whether you're more sterile or you have more sensitivity, like throughout the rest of your life, you're going to be pretty pissed off at all those people that didn't actually do what we're doing. everyone else that's just like on the sidelines, not saying anything about it and just kind of going with the flow, making their money, making their livelihoods, and not looking out for future generations. So that's where I see that's my stake in it. It's like I've already had my exposures, and at some time I'll be off the planet, but I want all of our kids to not suffer like I know I've suffered and other people around me have suffered.
Yeah, it's really a good conclusion to the discussion, Scott. It's really a moral issue, and I'd say like a couple lessons of today. It's probably not to judge skeptics or people. I think deep down, like a lot of people are overstressed and they seem like apathic, or they don't listen to the issue and whatnot. But I think deep down, like when there's natural disasters, we see it. People help each other. Like people will still have humanity. I mean, even if you walk in the streets and no one will say hi, and if you do so, people think you're a serial killer. And I mean, I walk around, I listen to podcasts. I'm super like antisocial at my times, and I'm trying to get better. But like people need our help to learn that this is a real issue, and we need to be non-judgmental about it, which is hard. I'm the first to still see my wife use a cell phone next to her head for just a couple seconds, and I'm like, I cringe. I mean, I have a hard time. I'm like, well, and I mean, she designed the book, the entire book, and she's part of the business. She knows these things. It's not like, but it's pretty much like at some point, I don't know how to quantify that kind of damage that you're doing with a couple seconds exposure, right? So is it worse than, I don't know, tonight we might have a bag of chips. It's horrible food. Horrible. It's like, it's the worst, right? Yeah. But so how can you compare damage, and how do you still live a fairly like healthy, balanced life on a mental standpoint with these exposures? So kind of staying sane and whatnot. So being non-judgmental is something I had to learn, and I'm still learning. And now that I wrote a book about it, when I meet people, I see in their eyes, they're interested. They don't want me to tell them like, hey, never hold that thing in your hand, and never put that. When I see these things, I see them like feeling bad about themselves. They're like, wait a minute, am I irradiating my children? Which probably they are. Am I increasing my risk of brain cancer? Yeah, you probably are. But it's hard to receive as an information. So we have to be like human and empathic in the way we communicate the issue. And I think this is better than what I'm seeing with vaccines and with people both sides of the debates, like, oh no, you're wrong, this is bullshit, you're this, you're that, name calling. We can, if we fly above that, like you guys are doing, like you have overall everything you've done with EMF Warriors, like I don't see you posting a video that's like way too much and too much, and like the government's trying to get us. And some people do that, and it's probably true. And I'm not saying that's not true. Like there are conspiracies, there are things that are horrible that are happening, and there is a time and place to say that, and I respect people that are doing that. But at the same time, we gotta acknowledge all this discussion that the public will not join if the message is either too much or too confrontational, or that makes them feel bad. Yeah. Like, no, it's not sexy. It's the way, like, as a marketer, I mean, and I honestly, I just do marketing because I have to do it. I have to try to sell the book. I'm like, okay, well, in the past, I used to be selling nutrition. So like my first book, it was a set of ebooks, The Truth About Fat Burning Foods. So it's like people are like, oh yes, I want to learn how to burn fat, right? And it was about like heavy metals in salmon, and like what kind of stevia to pick, because one kind of stevia like is 99% sugar, dextrose, and like these food truths that you learn. And people got into it. We got thousands of sales from all around the world. They were so glad. But it is sexy. It is a sexy topic. Everyone wants to burn fat. Everyone wants to learn about food and nutrition. And then I'm there trying to market this idea that invisible signals are trying to get you, and that if you put your phone on airplane mode, you're going to sleep better. And I'm like, doesn't sound sexy, does it? I'm like telling you to do something. So I guess this is like just an open-ended thing where I don't have the answer, but let's find sexy ways to talk about that. Whether it's very like brutal studies that show like this study is credible and let's show it, or something that uses humor, or an authority, someone from Hollywood that's like, you know what, guys, this is true, and let's get artists and Hollywood stars together. And right now, what I hear from Hollywood, from just a couple contacts that I have, I don't want to sound big shot, but I'm trying to get the message out, like you guys and everyone. Like if a star can say, I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio with his documentary, right, about global warming, and it's like, I endorse this thing. If someone does that with cell phones right now, it would mean sometimes the end of sponsorships.
Yes,
it would mean so. Well, exactly. So a lot of people, what I've been told is that most of them, I mean, they're biohackers. Let's face it. They pay million per year just to get healthy and to stay healthy and to gain 50 pounds and lose 150 and get in shape for this role and stay on top of their game and never age. They have all these goals. So they do find information about EMF warriors and whatever. Like, they read these books, but they don't tell anyone about it because they feel like their agent will freak out and they will lose this Emmy award, or I don't know. Like, it's complicated.
No,
it's complicated.
You just really hit on. You know, I've been in the entertainment industry for over 20 years myself, and most people will probably be shocked to hear that, but I have been, and with my contacts and me looking and absorbing a lot of entertainment over the years, I can tell you right now, there is a show that has been on the air for a long time that actually shows what happens when you eliminate EMFs from your life for a long time, and you see good progress, and you see metabolic symptoms go away, and you see people get healed, and then when they come back to the States, for the next several months again, they go back to what they used to be like. And that show was called Survivor. If you remember Survivor on TV,
oh my God,
they would go to the island, and they would be away from the power grid. They'd be away from probably the only EMFs they were getting was from camera equipment, right?
Yeah.
And what happened in 6 weeks on that show? They all were in sunlight. They were grounded at a beach. They had a lot of obese people that lost lots of weight without even trying. They were eating the wrong foods. They were eating rice. They were eating all these high starchy, carby foods. It didn't matter. They were losing weight. They were getting better. They're getting healthier. And a lot of those people, I think they were kind of like us, or they had some electrosensitivities. They had just more exposure to this, and their cortisol goes up a little higher, and they're constantly up here, and they can't actually get to the point where their bodies can heal as efficiently as they could because their sleep is compromised, and as one angle of the circadian rhythm part. But one other point I was going to hit on before we end this here, but and it just hit me that EMFs really are a tool. They could be a tool used for good or bad, just like anything. And just like if you have a surgeon with a knife in his hand, right? He can use that to heal if he knows how to use it correctly as a tool, but it also can be a weapon. So people that have known about the EMF issue forever and know that it can be like a tool that can be used in various aspects, there could just be like I was saying before, like a synergy. You're just have a place in your house where there's just a convergence of all this EMF soup, and that happens to be your office space, and you spend 4 or 5 hours a day there, and you never can heal. Like you're always in that soup. So a real good way to test if this has an influence is, and this is what I tell people, and I know you've told this to people too, go out on vacation, go spend a week out in the middle of nowhere on a camping trip, right? Or I'm not saying go on Survivor, but go out there, take a break, and a longer extended trip for a week at least, maybe even 2 weeks if you can do it, and think about taking that trip in a place that's not a population density, where it's really a remote place, and see how you feel, and remember that, and then come back, and then in that next window, that next day or two, when you come back, see how you feel. Now, a lot of people won't feel any different. And maybe that's a good thing because maybe EMFs are not affecting them at home, or there's other issues if they do have some other problems they're experiencing. But to really like test yourself is what it's going to have to be in the short term before this issue goes mainstream.
Yeah, I love it. And this is, I don't know, we should, digital detox, there are so many aspects that we could talk about and get people on board. People are more on board with the digital detox idea. Even, I mean, the cell phone, I want to go above and beyond the cell phone. I think it could be a conversation for the future, what technology is doing to us, not just a signal, but how it's impacting our productivity, behavior, how people look at their phones and don't look at their kids and stuff like that. There's crazy stuff that it's doing to us, even, and that is even if we develop somehow safe signals, and they're perfectly safe, it will not solve everything. So I guess that's like, and I don't want to get into this, it's going to take another hour, but it's something that I'm thinking about. I'm like, oh, well, maybe an next book or something, but it's true that it is more than the signals on top of that. So when people disconnect for like 3 days, and I don't know, like people, you see these articles like Huffington Post and BuzzFeed, I don't know what, like, I broke my cell phone for a week and it was the best week of my life. People
Right.
report like, yeah, they report like, oh my God, now I have conversations again. I didn't feel stressed. I didn't have an alarm clock. I felt productive at work. And like, after that, they bought another iPhone because they kind of have to, or they feel that they have to. But again, this is another way to have them like go by the countryside for a week where you cannot even pick up a cell phone signal, and they're like liberated on all levels, not only the EMFs, but even just like human connection. It's crazy. But that's another great tip. Like get outside the country or just have a night of sleep in the middle of a forest, and people, yeah, they're on board.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we'll end it here, and definitely at some point, maybe even in the near future, in the next month or two, I'll have you back on. We can just continue. I know we can just endlessly talk about this issue. It's so like, it is going to be like the biggest issue. People are going to be aware of this like 10, 20 years down the road, and they're going to be like, why did I dismiss all this stuff early on? Why didn't I investigate it more? So it's like once you know, there's kind of no going back. But then, you try to keep optimistic, destroy all negativity around this issue, be positive, look for better solutions, and we'll all like be riding this horse together into the future.
Awesome. I have nothing to add to that. Great words, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Nick. We'll see you again.
Thanks, Scott.
All right.
Thank you for being part of the EMF Warriors community. We look forward to bringing you our next episode. Be certain to join in discussions on our EMF Warriors closed Facebook group. And make sure you subscribe to our fortnightly newsletter to stay up to date with global developments. If you would like to learn more about us, go to emfwarriors.com, where we have curated an amazing library of free information, resources, and solutions to your most pressing EMF concerns and needs. Because together, we can make a real difference. The materials and content discussed within this podcast are the opinions of host Jason Gordon-Smith and Scott Compton and guest interviews. This information is intended as general information only for listeners of this podcast. Listeners should always seek professional advice, and the content and opinions expressed in this podcast should never be construed as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. EMF Warriors.